Well, I think we'll go ahead and get started then. It's about 3 minutes after. I want to stay on schedule. So welcome everyone. My name is Bill Schaefer. I'm the director for the Greater Madison MPO, and thank you for joining us today for the second MPO CARPC Lunch and Learn webinar. This one hosted by the MPO in partnership with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation Southwest Region. The topic of this one, local project funding opportunities through the MPO and WisDOT, is timely with the application cycles for a number of different grant programs coming up this year. A few housekeeping items before we get started, just to let you know, everyone is muted. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you want. Please put questions in the chat so that everyone can see them. Questions in the Q&A function aren't part of the recorded webinar. So questions in the chat. If there's a quick clarification on a slide, we'll try to answer that in the chat during the presentation if possible. Otherwise, all Q&A will be at the end of the webinar. And also a reminder that the presentation slide decks and the recording will be available on our website, should be up there sometime next week.
Bill, you'll have to take control again. Just click once. When I muted myself, I took control of my own computer again.
Okay. Okay, so before we get started, just wanted to show you here a breakdown of the registrants for the webinar. As expected, majority of folks are local government staff, about 60%. We got another 9% other public agency staff, 13% local elected officials, 11% consultant, and then a couple other categories there. Kind of pretty much what we expected given the topic. So before we dive into the details of the funding programs, and I know a number of you know this already, but I do want to clarify the MPO's role in project funding. So the MPO adopts a transportation improvement program, or TIP, which is a coordinated listing of all regionally significant projects with committed funding over the next 5 years. And that serves to implement our regional transportation plan. Any project with federal funding must be included in the TIP. With respect to federally funded projects, WisDOT, the MPO, and Metro Transit, as the major transit operators, select projects for funding they control. WisDOT controls most roadway funds, including those for state highway projects and some programs for local projects. WisDOT also manages the 2 programs for which the MPO selects projects, overseeing project design and for us. The MPO, however, must approve all projects, determining their consistency with the plan and approving them for inclusion in the TIP. The Surface Transportation Block Grant Urban Program, formerly known as the Surface Transportation Program, which is terminology WisDOT still uses, is the largest one for which MPO receives an allocation of funding and selects projects. We currently receive about $7 million a year in funding. Most any type of capital project is eligible for funding under the program. As you can see there, roadway construction, transit, bicycle pedestrian facilities, ITS projects, and then we also use some funding for our travel demand management program. All of the standard items for roadway construction projects are eligible cost, as well as bicycle and transit facilities as well, where appropriate. Many of the road projects that MPO has funded in recent years have included off-street as well as on-street bike facilities such as side paths and grade separated crossings. The MPO only funds construction, not design or real estate, in order to stretch our funding further. Utilities, sewer and water, are not eligible per federal policy. The MPO requires a 40% local cost share, with federal funding covering 60% of the estimated cost at the time of approval. And this is in order to stretch our funding over more projects. We also have recently adopted a policy goal to utilize 10% of our funds for, quote, small projects with a maximum of 1.4 million in federal funding, in order to allow smaller communities and projects to compete for funding. We solicit applications every 2 years in conjunction with WisDOT's local program cycle, with applications due in June. We are currently soliciting applications now for this program. It is important to keep in mind that projects funded are typically scheduled out several years into the future. As you can see there, typically 4 to 6 years out is when projects are awarded funding. Sorry about that, not advancing for some reason. There, oh. Projects must meet certain requirements in order to be considered for funding. Among those are that the project be fully scoped out and have a reasonable cost estimate and proposed schedule. WisDOT staff will talk about this a little more. Now I'm going to turn it over to David Canning from our staff to provide an overview of the scoring system we use to evaluate projects.
Well, thanks, Bill. I'm David Canning, a transportation planner with the MPO, and I'll just go over a few slides of how we evaluate and score Stpg urban project applications. So this slide here provides an overview of that process. We're actually we're in the process of making some revisions to our scoring system right now. And this table actually reflects those recommended changes. We do anticipate that the MPO board is going to take action on the changes at their meeting next week. And if you look at the table, you'll see that there are seven categories with different scoring weights depending upon the type of project that's submitted. This is to reflect the difference in importance among the project types. For example, system preservation, if you look at category number 2, which addresses condition of pavement, is worth 20% of a roadway project score, but less for other types of projects. Next slide.
Working on it.
Okay, so this provides an example of how the goals in our RTP and associated supporting policies relate to the project evaluation criteria categories. For example, goal number 1, which is to create connected, livable neighborhoods and communities, has a supporting policy to encourage growth in developed areas, activity centers, and along transit corridors. Under the supports regional transportation plan and regional development framework criterion, projects enhancing these areas are awarded more points. This shows the specific sub-criteria and total points associated with each criteria for roadway projects. For example, out of the 18 total possible points for the first category, which is importance to regional transportation system, 1/2 or up to 9 are based on the regional classification of the roadway. Up to 3 are based on whether it is a freight route, and if so, its importance, and up to 6 on whether it supports an employment or mixed-use center or corridor. And this shows the specific sub-criteria and total points associated with each category for independent bike projects. For example, if we look at the first category again, 20 of the 25 possible points are awarded based on whether the project improves the connectivity. the bikeway network, and that's specifically the All Ages and Abilities Bikeway Network. And then up to 5 points are awarded for projects in areas of natural or scenic interest. So that really summarizes the evaluation and scoring process for roadway projects and bike projects. If you want to look at our current criteria, you can go to our website, and on our tip page, there are some links that provide the information I just went over. And then also the modified version of our scoring criteria will be posted once they're finalized, and that'll hopefully happen sometime later next week. And then Ben now is going to talk about transportation alternative program projects.
All right, things are a little wonky with the presentation running off of my computer. Turns out that every time I try and answer a question, I steal control back from whoever's doing the presentation. So apologies for the hiccups I caused there, Bill. So our Transportation Alternatives Program, sometimes known as TA, sometimes known as TAP, specifically for bicycle and pedestrian projects, we get around $600,000 annually and do an application process every 2 years. We also do Safe Routes to Schools projects as well as infrastructure. And there's an additional pool of these funds that are available through a statewide pool through WisDOT. So outside of the urbanized area, other communities are just apply directly to WisDOT. And projects that we don't select for funding with local dollars also get passed on to WisDOT for consideration for funding with statewide dollars. Application cycle will be beginning in the fall of this year, and applications will be due in January of 22. Now I can't control my own screen. We have, similarly to the Stpg program, eligible project categories are going to be on and off street facilities for bicyclists and pedestrians, new or enhanced. We won't do just a resurfacing of an existing paved trail, but if you wanted to widen or pave an unpaved trail, that would be considered an enhancement that we would be eligible. You can see other categories there. WisDOT has its own criteria and project eligibility requirements for funds that they control. So again, if you're in an area outside of the metro area, these wouldn't relate to you because these are just specific MPO policies. Again, for construction only on infrastructure projects, not design or real estate or utilities. The cost share for this, as with the Stpg urban program, all except very low cost projects are funded at 60% federal share. This helps stretch limited funding. And we do require a commitment to maintain these facilities year round and require inclusion of appropriate wayfinding signage. Until last year, those were scoring metrics, and we decided to make them project eligibility requirements in order, again, to make these dollars go further and make sure that the facilities are open to the public year round. The project scoring system, again, similar to the one the Stpg urban projects use, but with a few differences. In each case, though, the criteria prioritize projects that support the goals in the RTP. One of those goals is expanding the low traffic stress network, or the all ages and ability network that David mentioned. And so here's a screenshot of our low traffic stress bike route finder available through our website. One of the tools that we make available to the public, but that also feeds back into how we score and prioritize projects. Safe Routes to Schools projects, non-infrastructure projects, are scored differently. We really just have two sort of overarching categories of points that are each worth half of the total project score. One is the scope of audience and the reach and impact. And then the other is health, safety, and environmental justice. We just split that right down the middle. And then finally, we administer with Metro Transit support the Section 5310 program, which funds specialized transportation projects for seniors and persons with disabilities. We aren't going to go over this because it's a fairly specialized, no pun intended, audience for this, but I administer both this program and the TA program for the MPO. And so please do reach out to me if you have any further questions about the 5310 program and what it might be able to do for you. We will be opening this up for applications in June of this year for the next funding cycle. And that wraps up the MPO portion of the webinar. So I'm going to hand things over to Michael Erickson, Local Program Manager for the Southwest Region, Wisconsin DOT, and he's going to talk about the programs that he administers. Again, please put any questions you have in the chat and we'll try and answer them all at the end of the webinar. Thanks.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Erickson. I'm the local program manager from the Southwest Region, regional office in Madison. Next slide.
Michael, you're going to need to click on the screen, and once you get going, I'm going to take control of my computer again so that I can go off camera and mute. So you'll then need to re-control my computer again.
Okay, thank you. For everyone, I'm pulling up a slide. This is our Wisconsin Department of Transportation website. You can access that at wisconsindot.gov. The third tab over says doing business. And if you go down to the local programs, and what'll pop up is the assistance programs. If you click on that, that will take you to the programs which we are discussing today. This website offers various tools and helpful materials and videos for local governments, officials to use both for the application process and after your project's approved. In this website, there's also information concerning the design consultant selection process, real estate acquisition, and the environmental process, just to name a few of the important topics for a successful project that you can find on our website.
Michael, again, you're going to have to click just somewhere on the screen to reactivate your control. Then you can use the...
Yep, there it goes. These are the WisDOT programs that are managed by the WisDOT region, our office. These were mentioned previously by the MPO. So to begin with, the Surface Transportation Program, Urban. The Urban program is primary for roadways classified as collector and hire. Bill did not mention that, but there is a caveat that these are for collectors and hire, and then Bill had gone through many of the improvements that are available for the use of urban funds. I'm mentioning STP Local Bridge. This program is actually, when you go through our website, it's called the Local Bridge Improvement Assistance Program. Local Bridge is available for structures identified on our statewide bridge list and are deficient that are over 20 feet or greater in length. Bridges are eligible for rehabilitation if their sufficiency rating is 80 to 50. And if the sufficiency rating is below 50, those bridges are eligible for reconstruction. This program does not go through the MPO, but is available to everyone on this call today. It's an 80-20 funding ratio, meaning 80% federal state, 20% local, up to the cost share agreement at approval. And just so everyone knows, this application process is in conjunction with Dane County. Dane County needs to prioritize the bridges before they're moved on to WisDOT for the selection process. Next up is the Transportation Alternatives Program, also known as TAP. Ben had mentioned many of the aspects of it. Transportation alternatives include safe routes to school projects, studies and planning projects, including infrastructure, transportation enhancements, and or bike pedestrian projects. Project sponsors in the greater Madison area are available for the allocation a process and selection through the MPO, and also through the statewide selection process. Different than the MPO process, in the statewide selection, you can be eligible for design and construction. If it's approved through the statewide selection, that's an 80-20 funding ratio. One thing that has to be mentioned is it's a reimbursement program. So the project sponsor pays 100% of the costs up front and then is reimbursed for their cost share, that 80% or 60% through the MPO with WisDOT. There's also the Transportation Economic Assistance Program, or T. The Transportation Economic Assistance Program funds at 50-50% ratio, and it's based on newly hired employees or retained employees for companies, and that's up to a $1 million grant. It's for roadway improvements, railroad improvements, harbor assistance, or airport projects, which directly benefit or help attract employers and encourage businesses to expand or industries to remain in the state. Once again, the T program is a reimbursement program, which you pay 100% up front for the cost of the project, and then you're reimbursed for your cost share. And then once again, that's at 50-50, 50% state, 50% local, up to the amount of the agreement. A couple examples of T projects are in the city of Fitchburg, one that's just been completed or completed last year. That would be the Faley Glen extension between Lacey Road and East Sherrill Parkway for the ProMega corporate headquarters. And then another project we have that was just approved and is in process is the Lacey Road expansion or upgrading of Lacey Road near Seminole Highway. That's also for the ProMega Corporation, but it's a research facility. And then it's going to benefit as well Sub-Zero Wolf headquarters and manufacturing facility. At the bottom, I'm mentioning STP Rural. There are some areas within the MPO area or in Dane County that are eligible for the STP Rural program. It's mostly for county highways, but there are some communities that have an eligible roadway. This is a program that, and it has, the roadway has to be classified as collector or hire outside of the urban area. That would be the urban area, not the planning boundary. And it's funded at 80-20, and it's in conjunction once again with the county highway, Dane County Highway Department here in Madison. They prioritize those projects before they move on forward with WisDOT. Next up is, now this program, the Local Roads Improvement Program, is managed by central office. That would be the local programs finance section. LRIP assists local governments improving seriously deteriorated county highways, town roads, city and village streets. This program, unlike the others I've mentioned, which are for functionally classified collector and hire, you can get funding all the way down to a town road or to a local city street or village street. It has three components: the county highway improvement, the town improvement, and the municipal street improvement program. These projects are based on entitlement funds derived in each county and managed by the Wisconsin County Highway Commissioners, and the awards are distributed by a committee of the County Highway Commissioners within each of the specific WisDOT regions. There's also within LRIP a discretionary program in addition to the standard LRIP. That allows municipalities to apply for additional funds for high-cost road projects. Discretionary projects have additional requirements and are competitively reviewed and prioritized by a statewide committee of various stakeholders and approved by the WisDOT secretary based on defined criteria and with a fair geographic distribution of projects statewide. These funds are approved at a 50-50 funding ratio. Just so you know, but can come in less if the sponsor accepts that project. Also, this is a reimbursement program. so that you pay all the funds up front and then you're reimbursed for your cost on that project. But once again, this is managed by central office, not the region and not the MPO. I'm going to briefly mention that in the governor's budget, there was a $75 million request for additional funds to be used in a local roads improvement supplemental type program, but we don't have information on that. It's still being going through the biannual budget project process, and until that's finalized and signed by the governor, I don't have information on that, but that is out there just for your information. What I'd like to discuss now are the application cycles. So for the STP, STP Urban, STP Rural, and Local Bridge, or the Local Bridge Improvement Assistance Program, those are done on odd years. So we're going out right now. Bill's going to be soliciting for these projects. WisDOT will be soliciting beginning May 14th out on our website, and there will be a statewide local roads improvement program symposium that some more information will be coming out, and we're anticipating approvals in the fall, in February of 2022. For the Transportation Alternatives Program, Ben had mentioned earlier, normally that goes out in even years, so 2022, and then the next cycle would be 2024. Those projects we're anticipating, and this is tentative schedule, we'll have more information, it should be solid shortly, but August of 2021, the applications, and then the approvals would be in June or July of 2022. For the Transportation Economic Assistance Program, or T, that's continuous. You can apply for that program at any time, depending on your needs. It's a first come, first serve program. So if you have a need or are interested in that program, please contact me or the statewide coordinator, which is listed on our website. The Local Roads Improvement Program, or LRIP, that's done in odd years in conjunction with the biannual budget, and that application cycle will begin in September of 2021. Going back to these projects, so for the STP Urban, Bill kind of mentioned this, the rural, the bridge, we're anticipating that those construction funds will be used in calendar year 2025, 2026, or 2027 if you're approved. For TAP, the cycle, those projects, if you're approved, we're thinking that those, or the scheduling of those projects would be for calendar year 2025 or 2026. Transportation assistant projects, as soon as those get approved, those funds are available for reimbursement. That can happen as fast as 6 to 8 months, depending on the needs of the community or the business that's inquiring into them for these projects. But that falls under a whole different kind of pretext. So if you have any questions on the Transportation Economic Assistance Program, please contact me or the statewide representative, which is David Carlson. For the Local Roads Improvement Program, the LRIP, those funds are available similar to the biannual budget cycle. So they're going to be doing their approvals for the 2021 cycle, and the anticipation is that you would be using those funds in calendar year 2022 or 2023. And generally, we want those projects completed within 4 years after their approval. So next, I'd like to talk about application tips and pointers. And Bill kind of mentioned this earlier, but I want to emphasize this. So one of the things looking at as you're looking at these programs to apply for, both for the MPO and statewide, is your project fully scoped? The project sponsor should have a solid concept of what they intend to construct, and they should include bike and pedestrian accommodations for that project. And then you also have to consider what your future development and or expansion needs for your community. Looking at your long-range plan and those kind of documents that you have internally. And then the other thing to emphasize with the fully scoped project is the project limits need to be set at application. You can't approve a project, or you can't apply for a project and have it from point A to point B. Then after it's approved, want to make it from point C to point D. Having your project limits set is very critical to these projects and programs. Reasonable estimate. Reviewing what it'll cost to design and construct your project. Knowing that these projects are out a couple years, you should be thinking about inflation or adjustments to that project, contingencies, and also what items are going to cost in the future. Concrete, steel, petroleum. One item right now that's going out of the roof is wood. So if you're going to have any wood involved with your project, you might want to consider that as well. Scheduling. Scheduling is dependent on the complexity of the project. A less complex project can be delivered quicker. Having a realistic schedule and adhering to that schedule is a requirement of having these projects, getting these projects approved or moving forward with these projects, especially if you have funding in the MPO area. Allocations are based on how the funding how you get the funding and completing it in a timely manner. MPO funding allocation is based on the completed projects within the program cycles they are approved. Bill kind of mentioned that earlier. Advanced design. The MPO does an approved design, so in most cases you're going to have to either begin design after it's approved, but you do have the option of approving or asking to have an advanced design project for a federal aid project or program. Local governments are encouraged to do this, but there is a risk to that. You pay for the design consultant up front, and there is no guarantee that your project will get approved in the future, either by WisDOT or the MPO. You're taking that risk. So that is something to consider, but the benefits that come out of advanced design is, one, you have a better scope of the project or the improvement. You have a better cost estimate once you go to request your project funding, and you have some of the design work completed in advance of that project, so your schedule has a better chance of being met. Real estate, railroads, utilities, and public favor or opposition to the project. All projects have less real estate is better on a project, but all projects have the possibility of real estate. If you think you have real estate on your project, take that into consideration, because it takes time to acquire real estate once you have an approved project, and you can't purchase real estate until you get through the environmental document and the DSR, which is a technical term for the design study report. If you have a railroad, take that into consideration. If a railroad's within 1,000 feet of your proposed project, that can take up to 2 years to coordinate with the railroad. So if you have a railroad project, your scheduling will be in the outer years for that project. Utilities. It's not just your public utilities, your sanitary and your water mains, but you have to take into consideration private utilities, which can be cable, the electrical lines and whatnot. So there's both private and public utilities that should be taken into consideration. And last but not least, does the public favor or oppose your project? It's something to consider. Gauging the public support for a project before you apply for a project. There's been instances in the state of Wisconsin where projects approved and then they go out and the community totally opposes the project and it gets sunk. I bring this up. This is a standalone program. It's currently out there for applications. It's the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. They're called RAISE grants, formerly BUILD grants, and prior to that, Tiger grants. These are funded 50-50. You deal directly with USDOT or FHWA for these grants. The application website and information link is here, and those applications are due July 12th, 2021. Very competitive. Less than 1% of the applications nationwide were approved. Little bit of effort. So if you want to, and I would usually go for a higher cost project or a big project, big improvement that you're considering, but there is an opportunity through this program to get some funding, but it's very highly competitive, and you might need to hire a consultant or have some specialty help in filling out that application. And with that, this is my contact information. I'm Michael Erickson, Michael Erickson at DOT.wi.gov, and my phone number. And if you have any questions about the local programs or need assistance, please give me a call. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Linda Richardson and Charlene Schmidt. They're next up with the Highway Safety Improvement Program.
Thank you, Michael, and good afternoon, everyone. Like he said, I am Charlene Schmidt. I'm the traffic safety engineer for the Southwest Region Madison office. And even though Linda has the brunt of the presentation, I'm just going to give a quick introduction as to what my role is when you're submitting Hyssop applications. I will be your main point of contact, so those applications will go to me first. I will review them for, just making sure everything is in the right place, and the brunt of it would be the project evaluation factor, PEF, making sure that that is valid so that we can move forward with the submittal. And basically just making sure that whatever safety issues that you're targeting are using correct countermeasures. So keeping things like that in check. And with that, I'm going to hand this off to Linda, who's my partner in crime here, and she is going to explain the brunt of the Hyssop application process.
Thank you, Charlene. As Charlene mentioned, she's the region's safety engineer and handles the technical topics such as crash patterns and effective solutions. I handle more of the project scheduling and funding. What is the Highway Safety Improvement Program, otherwise known as Hsip? It's a federal program for projects that reduce the number and severity of crashes on public roads. Preference is for low-level treatments that can be deployed relatively quickly, say within about 4 years of application. WisDOT selects projects submitted on applications by analyzing reported crashes and the project's treatment's ability to reduce similar crashes in the future. A location must have a reported crash history, and treatment must directly address that crash history. An example of a Hissa project that many on this webinar might be familiar with is the Mineral Point Road and Midvale Boulevard intersection. The Hissa project added left turn lanes on Midvale and a hill warning system on northbound Mineral Point. The completed project has been in place for about 5 years now, and the City of Madison was the project sponsor. Typical project funding is 90% federal up to a project's cap and 10% responsibility of the project sponsor. The federal funds are capped at a certain amount, which varies on each project depending on the project details. And the project sponsor is responsible for any costs that exceed that cap. Projects must be let through the state's bid letting system. Local lets are not allowed. We're just hitting the highlights today. More information is available on the state's public website. This is the same web page that Michael had in his presentation, but you'd go over to the safety tab and then scroll down to the Highway Safety Improvement Program. The site contains resources such as the current Hsip application form. In addition to the 2-page application form, a complete application package also includes site photos, a sketch of the proposed treatment, a crash diagram, and an itemized project cost estimate. WisDOT accepts applications twice every year. Applications are due to the region office on either February 15th or August 15th. Both of the application cycles are the same. They would accept the same type of applications for the same type of projects. We just do it twice a year to allow for, I guess, quicker response to maybe crash patterns that are occurring. We in the region then review the application for completeness and will discuss any questions or proposed edits with you. Charlene mentioned that she then computes a project evaluation factor before I submit the application to central office. We'll get an official denial or approval letter from central office within a few months. Here is Charlene's contact information. She'll be your first point of contact. If you're interested in submitting a Hyssop application or are concerned about a location but don't know if it's a good fit for the program, please give Charlene a call. She'll be able to guide and assist you. Thank you. And I believe now we'll turn this back over to Bill for question and answers.
Thanks, Linda. So yeah, well, we've got about 15 minutes here for any questions. There is one question that was put in the chat that I didn't answer. I think, Michael, you're probably the best one to answer, but City of Middleton has a project, a bike path project where they've kind of divided it into 3 segments and have actually completed the middle segment with local funding, and wondering about submitting for federal funding for the east and west segments, and whether those should be 2 projects or 1 project, and any issues they should keep in mind with respect to that.
My suggestion would be to, and it's truly up to the city of Middleton, but my suggestion would be to keep them as phases. The larger the project, in most instances, the harder to get approved. As Bill mentioned, for the MPO allocation, you know, Ben, if it's, you know, and this is a TAP-like project, they only have like $600,000 annually. Statewide, there's $7 million. So in the last cycle, there were some $1 million projects that were approved, but you're better off breaking it up. And if you put in 2 applications, you can literally put in 2 applications, one for one phase, one for another phase, and see if both get approved or one gets approved. You know, sometimes it takes a little time for these TAP projects, can be multiple phases. Prime example is Glacial Drummond in the state of Wisconsin, or the Capital City Trail with the city of Madison. So I would say definitely if you've completed one phase, and then in that application, part of what you want to do is discuss the history of where you're at. I don't know if you've done design for the whole project, but if you have, you want all that information in there, because it'll help understand where you're at and the commitment of the community for that project.
There's also a question related to design and advanced design, and whether, so the question is, can design be included upon request for federally funded projects? The MPO does not fund design. Communities can get approval to start design before they have a federally approved project, which is what Michael was talking about with respect to advanced design. So you can, that would allow a community to start design of a project before they actually receive funding, but to make sure that they're going through the required process for federally funded projects if you do get funded. I don't know if WisDOT funds design for any of its programs.
I'll go first, and I saw Linda come on as well. We do fund design. One of the things is we used to fund design only. We've stopped doing that. So now if you come in, you can get funding for design and construction. But we do have timely use of funds requirements. So you have 6 years to complete the project. So it gets a little tight if you do that. But there is availability. What you can't do is go out, hire a design consultant if you don't have an approved project and expect to be paid for that consultant after you get an approved project. You have to get an approved design and construction project prior to hiring a consultant. And I think I do have to clarify that if you do either through the MPO start an advanced design or with the programs going through our process, the programs managed by WisDOT, that there is a cost for our oversight. I'm not going to say it's minimal, but there is a cost that's added, included for our in-house engineering for our review of projects so that they're eligible for federal aid. And I'll stop and I'll let Linda go.
Well, thank you, Michael. Yeah, the Hissa program is very similar to what Michael is saying. You can apply for Hissa funding for design as well as construction, but as Michael was saying, it does impact the process. We need to have not only the application approved, but then also have the project completely authorized for charging before you can, begin consultant solicitation and consultant negotiation and so forth. So it does create kind of a lengthening to the design process.
Yeah, and one thing I would say to everyone on the line, I'm a firm believer in putting your eggs in the construction basket. These are formulaic program approvals. So if you're asking for design and construction, what you're doing is you're increasing the total cost of your request. If you're only asking for construction, you have a smaller request, so you somewhat have a better chance for design. And design isn't the most expensive part of your project. Don't get me wrong, I understand it's expensive to design a project, especially for big projects, but I'm a firm believer in starting that advanced design. As I had mentioned, you have better scope, you know what you're building, you know what you're up against, and then you also have some of your design done in advance.
Hyssop's a little bit different. Even if you don't ask for Hsip funding for design, the cost of design still is involved in the project evaluation calculation. So, it's in Hsip, not asking for design doesn't directly impact how much could be funded through construction. It doesn't help you there. It's just the timing of the design.
Another question that was put into the Q&A, do bridge grants cover pedestrian bicycle bridges or just roadway bridges? I'm quite sure that that's just roadway bridges, but ped bike bridges or underpasses are eligible for funding under the TAP program as well as our Stpg urban program.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely correct, Bill. The local bridge assistant or improvement assistance program or local bridge or STP bridge is only for vehicular traffic. You can have bike pedestrian accommodations included with that project or sidewalks if you had sidewalks prior with the previous structure, but you cannot use the local bridge program for pedestrian or bicycle bridges.
Okay. Looks like we're getting in another one. Ben's adding another one from the Q&A. How rigorous is the application process? Many smaller communities don't have grant writers on staff. How much does the NPO or DOT help communities with the application process? I can start by saying that I don't think the application process is all that onerous, especially compared to like application processes for some of those federal discretionary programs like the one that Michael mentioned, that can't remember, RAISE, the new
Raise or the Tiger or the
something
Tiger
like
grant.
that. That's much more rigorous, and we're certainly available to help answer questions related to, but there is a standard state form that you must fill out, and then we have a supplemental form that we use for both programs, just to ask to get information to help us with respect to evaluating the projects using our scoring criteria. There also is a form that we'll have available that WisDOT prepared, showing how to prepare an itemized budget, or the items that you would want to include in preparing an itemized budget for a project. But we're certainly happy to help in any way we can. Also happy to meet with you, and that's something I would certainly recommend, that we can help. By meeting, we can kind of identify any issues, any concerns, any red flags with respect to a project, and that can help you put together a better, more competitive application.
Yep, and my comment would be, anybody who's online today, or for anybody who would contact me, we're here to assist you. I do understand that. I worked at a municipality, I've worked at the county level, so sometimes these applications can be intimidating. One of the things I would recommend is, when our applications come out on May 14th, there's also instructions. The guidelines will be there, the application will be there, and there's instructions on how to fill out the application. I would read those first, and then if you had questions, then contact me, and I am more than willing. And as Bill said, WisDOT will meet with you as well. We can help you. We cannot fill, and I don't think Bill can fill out your application either. We will help you with your application and make suggestions and make pointers. But if you do have specific questions, we can help you. One thing that's kind of critical, and for our WisDOT applications, is there's an area talking about your proposed improvement. And when we talk internally, we talk about purpose and need at WisDOT, and it's kind of really important to understand, you're building a bridge, but why are you building the bridge? You're building the bridge because the bridge is going to fall down. Your inspection report has said it's got the sufficiency rating. So understand, and it kind of gets to the scope of the project. But once again, we can help you with those important aspects of the application. So we're here to help.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Michael. I am definitely here to help answer your questions about the application. The screenshot that Linda showed, it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it's too crazy, but if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I can, definitely give you some pointers, but like you said, I can't do it for you, but I will be here to help you out.
I'd like to just echo all of that for the TA and the 5310 programs administered through the MPO that I work on. I definitely encourage you to submit an application a week early. I think WisDOT probably, I don't know if they have the capacity to do that, but if I get an incomplete application at the application deadline, there's not much we can do about it. But if I get that same incomplete application a week early, and I can say, you didn't fill out anything on page 3, and that's required information, then that's going to help you get a lot further. And then also, where we give a page or a half a page for a project description, or to answer a question about the importance of the project, please use that space. A sentence saying, we want to build a bridge, to use Michael's example, is not very helpful, but we need to replace this bridge that connects a residential area to an elementary school and a job center, and this is how many people currently use it, and this is how far they'd have to go if the bridge fell down. That's all really important information that's going to help your project score better.
And I would echo exactly what Ben said. And that's another key point, is giving us those applications or having that discussion with us well in advance of when they're due. If you send them in on the last day and it's not complete, I can't help you, because they are strict deadlines. Bill has strict deadlines. WisDOT has strict deadlines as well for all applications.
And I just wanted to add one other thing related to the safety program. So we're currently contracting with the University of Wisconsin Transportation Operations Lab to do some safety analysis for us. So, and they are also developing a tool that would help communities identify potential countermeasures for, say, intersections with a high crash problems, particularly severe crashes. And that's something we plan to have a training session on for local staff and in the future. So that project's ongoing. Hope to have something towards the end of the summer, maybe fall, so look for some additional information. That also just the data that we collected, that we collect from that would be helpful for communities to identifying locations where there might be potential, might be potentially eligible for the Hyssop program.
We've got one last question. We're all out of time, but the last question that came through was for Linda and/or Charlene. Could you please discuss connecting highways in the HSIP program?
Yes, I'll handle that. Connecting highways are an eligible roadway for Hissa projects. It gets just a little bit complicated because it's a road that both WisDOT and the community have an interest in. But so an application for a connecting highway safety project could be filled out either by WisDOT or by the municipality, and they would again come through WisDOT, and WisDOT may choose to be the project sponsor. We've had cases where the municipality submitted the application, and then when we got the application, we said, yeah, we'd be willing to sponsor this. Is that all right with you, municipality? Thanks for bringing it up, and we want to be part of this. That does happen. There could also be times where WisDOT may step back from being the sponsor but may allow the municipality to be the project sponsor. So there is a little variability there.
Okay, well, it is a minute after 1. So just on behalf of WisDOT and the MPO, want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for today's webinar. Hope that's been helpful. Again, emphasize, please reach out with any questions or data requests related to any potential project applications. We'd be happy to help. And as I mentioned, we're also happy to meet with folks as well. So just a reminder, the next webinar is scheduled for June 17th, and that'll be a joint MPO CARPC webinar related to our respective plans that we're in the process of updating. So have a great day. And again, thanks for everyone for attending the webinar.